Hello there and welcome. Tonight, we're going to dim the lights on the grand battles and shining knights of medieval times. Instead, we're going to listen to the castle's secrets, the quiet, eerie, and often overlooked world of castle life after the sun goes down. We'll appreciate the profound silence, the flickering shadows, and the simple, steady heartbeat of a world lit only by fire and stars. It's a side of history we rarely get to feel. Before we drift back in time, if you enjoy these quiet journeys, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel. It lets me know you're out there. And please, feel free to leave a comment telling us where you're listening from tonight. It always amazes me how many of you are listening from different parts of the world, all settling down for the night together. It's a lovely thought. And now, it's time to let the day go. Find that cozy spot in your bed. Let your head sink gently into your pillow. Take a slow, deep breath in. And as you breathe out, feel your body growing heavier, melting softly into the mattress. Let your arms and legs become wonderfully limp. There is nothing to do right now, nowhere to be, except right here, ready for a peaceful journey. You blink awake, not in your own room, but on a straw mattress that rustles softly beneath you. The air is cool and carries the faint, sweet smell of hay and old stone. A thick wool blanket is pulled up to your chin, heavy and comforting. Through a narrow, slit-like window, the moonlight casts a sliver of pale, silvery light across the rough floor. You hear no cars, no sirens, no hum of electricity. Instead, there's the distant, lonely cry of an owl and the soft, rhythmic breathing of others sleeping nearby. A log shifts and crackles in the hearth embers, sending a brief, warm wave of smoky air your way. You feel a sense of profound stillness, a quiet that belongs to a world long past. You're in a castle, sometime in the 13th century. The fires have been banked, the gates have been barred, and a deep, watchful silence has fallen over the stone fortress. You are not a king, or a knight, or a lady of the court. You are simply a servant, one of the many souls who keep this stone giant alive. Your day of labor is done, and now, in the deep of the night, you are simply a witness to the eerie, quiet world of the sleeping castle. Let's listen to its stories as they unfold in the darkness. Let's drift back together, to a time when the world moved differently. When we think of medieval castles, our minds often conjure images of grand feasts in torchlit halls, of knights in shining armor, of colorful banners snapping in the wind. But tonight, we're going to step away from those bright, bustling scenes and explore something far more mysterious, far more intimate. The castle at night was an entirely different creature. As darkness fell across the medieval world, these great stone fortresses transformed from places of public ceremony into something much more private, much more secretive. The night brought with it a profound transformation, not just of light into darkness, but of the very soul of the castle itself. In the medieval mind, night was not simply the absence of day. It was a realm unto itself, filled with unseen possibilities and quiet mysteries. Beyond the castle walls lay a world that seemed suddenly vast and unknowable, populated by shadows and whispers that daylight had chased away. The darkness pressed against the stone walls like a living thing, making the castle feel like a precious island of warmth and safety in an ocean of uncertainty. But inside those walls, a different kind of magic unfolded. The castle's daytime hierarchy softened in the darkness. Lords and servants alike became fellow travelers through the quiet hours, united by the shared rhythm of rest and watchfulness. The grand halls that had echoed with laughter and conversation fell into a reverent hush, broken only by the settling of stones and the whisper of wind through arrow slits. This was a world lit only by fire and stars, where every flame was precious and every shadow held its own story. The night brought with it a slower pace, a deeper breathing, a chance for the castle to exhale after the day's labors. In these quiet hours, the true heart of medieval life revealed itself. not in the grand gestures of ceremony, but in the gentle, steady pulse of a community settling into rest. So let's dim the lights on the familiar tales of medieval glory, and instead listen to the castle's secret nighttime voice. Let's feel the weight of wool blankets and hear the soft rustle of straw mattresses. Let's walk the moonlit battlements and sit by dying embers, experiencing the profound peace that came with being safely enclosed within those ancient stone walls. The night is calling us back, and the castle is waiting to share its quietest, most intimate secrets. As the last light of dusk faded to a deep, inky blue, a familiar series of sounds would echo through the stone courtyards. The groan of old wood, the clank of heavy iron, the final, resounding thud of the portcullis meeting the ground. These were the sounds that marked the most important ritual of the medieval day, the sealing of the castle against the night. Imagine standing in the courtyard as this ceremony unfolds. The air has grown cool, carrying with it the earthy sense of the day's end. Horses returning to their stables, the lingering aroma of the evening meal, the sweet smell of hay being scattered for the night. Above you, the sky deepens from purple to black, and the first stars begin to appear like tiny, distant candles. The great wooden gates, massive things that have stood against countless storms and threats, begin their slow journey closed. These gates are not simply doors. They are monuments to security, crafted from oak trees that grew for centuries before being felled for this sacred purpose. Each plank is as thick as a man's body, bound together with iron straps that were forged in the castle's own smithy. The wood bears the scars of its service, gouges from enemy weapons, burn marks from flaming arrows, the deep grooves worn by years of opening and closing. You can hear the effort it takes to move these giants. The hinges, each one a masterwork of medieval engineering, protest with a low, musical groaning that seems to echo from the very stones themselves. The castle's guards, men who have performed this ritual countless times, lean their shoulders into the task with practiced rhythm. Their breath mists in the cooling air as they work, and their voices call out to each other in the practical language of their trade. Steady now. Mind the latch. Together on three. But the gates are only the beginning. Behind them, a second barrier awaits, the portcullis, that magnificent iron grating that slides down from the gatehouse like a massive set of teeth. Watch as it descends, tooth by tooth, until it settles into its stone groove with a sound like distant thunder. The metal is cold to the touch, each bar forged to withstand both the crush of battering rams and the patient work of files and saws. Between its bars, you can still see the world beyond, but now it feels impossibly distant, as if you're looking out from the safety of a cave. The drawbridge, if the castle has won, completes the transformation. The heavy wooden platform that has spanned the moat or dry ditch all day now rises like a drawbridge should, its chains singing a creaking song as it lifts. The bridge is perfectly balanced, a marvel of medieval engineering that can be raised by just 2 or 3 men working in concert. As it rises, it reveals the gap it has been covering, a space that suddenly seems as wide as an ocean, separating the castle from the outside world as surely as if it were on a distant island. Listen to the sounds of the locking. Each bar that slides into place, each key that turns in its massive lock, each chain that settles into its final position. These are not just mechanical sounds, but something deeper. They are the sounds of safety being secured, of the outside world being gently but firmly held at bay. They mark the moment when the castle transitions from being part of the larger world to becoming a world unto itself. The men who perform this ritual move with the unhurried precision of long practice. This is not a fearful scrambling to shut out danger, but a calm, almost ceremonial acknowledgement that the day is ending and the night requires different preparations. Each guard knows his role. Each lock has its proper sequence. Each bar must be checked and double-checked. There is something deeply comforting in this routine, this nightly promise that all will be secure until morning. As the last lock clicks into place, a profound change settles over the castle. The sounds from beyond the walls, the distant lowing of cattle in the fields, the bark of a village dog, the faint murmur of voices from the settlement beyond. These fade not just because they are blocked by stone and wood, but because they belong to a different world now. The castle has withdrawn into itself, like a great stone creature settling down for the night. The guards who have completed this ritual don't hurry away to their own rest. Instead, they linger for a moment in the courtyard, listening to the new quality of silence that the closed gates have created. It's not a complete silence. There are still sounds within the walls, the comfortable sounds of home. But it's a different kind of quiet, deeper and more enclosed. It's the silence of sanctuary. One by one, the guards drift away to their posts or their quarters, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. The courtyard grows empty, lit now only by the moon and stars above, and perhaps a single torch flickering in a wall sconce. The great gates stand like silent sentinels, and behind them, the castle settles into its nighttime rhythm. The world beyond the walls continues its own nocturnal business. Owls hunt in the forests, wolves howl in distant valleys, bandits perhaps move along darkened roads. But here, within these walls, all of that belongs to another realm. The castle has become what it was always meant to be in the darkness. Not just a fortress, but a home. A place where those within can rest secure in the knowledge that strong wood and iron and stone stand between them and the uncertain night. And so the ritual is complete. The gates are locked, the bridges raised, the portcullis down. The castle sleeps secure, wrapped in its own stone embrace, waiting patiently for the dawn to come and the great cycle to begin again. Let's drift now into the great hall. Hours ago, it was a place of noise and camaraderie. But now a profound quiet has settled. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and leftover wine. The massive wooden doors stand slightly ajar, their iron hinges silent now after an evening of constant opening and closing. As you slip through the doorway, your bare feet make no sound on the worn stone floor. The cold seeps up through the soles of your feet, a gentle reminder of the ancient stone beneath. The great hall stretches before you like a cavern carved from shadow and dying light. Where once dozens of voices rose in laughter and conversation, now there is only the soft whisper of settling embers and the occasional pop of a log shifting in the massive central hearth. The fire that roared so boldly during the evening feast has been carefully banked for the night, its flames reduced to a gentle, hypnotic dance of orange and gold. Long wooden tables, scarred by countless meals and meetings, stand like sleeping giants in the dim light. Their surfaces, cleared of trenchers and goblets, gleam dully with the patina of years. Here and there, a forgotten cup catches the firelight, winking like a sleepy eye. The benches, pushed neatly beneath the tables, seem to hold the memory of all the bodies that warmed them just hours before. Above you, the vaulted ceiling disappears into darkness. The massive oak beams, hewn from trees that were ancient when your grandfather was young, stretch across the hall like the ribs of some great sleeping beast. In the daylight, those beams are hung with colorful banners and the weapons of honored guests. But now, in the ember glow, they fade into shadow, creating a canopy of gentle darkness that seems to press down softly, encouragingly, like a heavy blanket pulled up to your chin. The tapestries that line the walls move gently in the drafts that always seem to find their way through the old stone. These magnificent weavings, depicting scenes of hunting and warfare, of saints and mythical beasts, seem to come alive in the flickering light. The threads shimmer and shift, and for a moment, you might imagine that the woven stag is actually bounding through a forest of flame, or that the embroidered knight is nodding sleepily in his eternal vigil. Near the hearth, the Lord's high table sits empty, its ornate chair pushed back as if its occupant has just risen and might return at any moment. The table's surface is smooth and dark, polished by countless hands and blessed by countless meals. A single pewter goblet remains, forgotten perhaps, or left intentionally as a silent sentinel in the growing quiet. At the foot of the great hearth, 3 castle dogs have claimed their ancient right to the warmest spot in the hall. They lie curled together, their rough coats rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of deep sleep. One of them, a massive wolfhound with graying muzzle, occasionally lets out a soft sigh or shifts position, his great paws twitching perhaps with dreams of the hunt. The others, smaller but no less content, press close against his warmth, their breathing creating a gentle counterpoint to the whisper of the dying fire. The rushes scattered across the floor release their sweet, grassy scent as you move carefully between the tables. Mixed with herbs like lavender and rosemary, they were changed fresh this morning, and now they cushion your steps with a soft rustling that sounds almost like gentle rain on leaves. The herbs were chosen carefully by the castle's steward, not just for their pleasant smell, but for their ability to keep away fleas and other unwanted visitors that might disturb the peace of the hall. Along the walls, iron sconces hold the remains of thick tallow candles, their wicks long since guttered out. The smell of spent candles mingles with the wood smoke, creating a perfume that speaks of home and safety, of a place where people have gathered and shared warmth for countless generations. These walls have heard laughter and tears, oaths of loyalty and whispered secrets, songs of joy and prayers for the dead. As you stand in the center of this vast space, you become aware of the profound silence that has settled over everything like a gentle snow. It's not the complete absence of sound. That would be unsettling, even frightening. Instead, it's a living quiet, filled with the soft breathing of the sleeping dogs, the occasional whisper of wind through the narrow windows, and the steady, reassuring heartbeat of the banked fire. The windows themselves are narrow slits in the thick stone walls, designed more for defense than for light. Now they frame patches of star-filled sky, each one a small portal to the vast night beyond the castle walls. The moonlight that filters through is pale and cool, creating pools of silver light that seem to float on the dark stone floor like patches of calm water. In one corner of the hall, a small wooden table holds the remnants of the evening's entertainment. A lute rests against its surface, its strings catching the firelight like spider silk. Beside it, sheets of parchment covered with musical notation curl slightly in the dry air. The minstrel who played for the evening's gathering has long since retired to his simple quarters, but his music seems to linger in the air, a ghostly melody that you might imagine you can still hear beneath the whisper of the wind. Near the great hearth, a carved wooden chair sits slightly apart from the others. This is where the castle storyteller held court earlier in the evening, weaving tales of heroes and monsters, of far-off lands and magical creatures. The chair seems to hold the memory of those stories, and if you listen carefully, you might imagine you can still hear the echo of his voice, describing adventures that took place in times even more distant than these. The Great Hall is the heart of the castle, the place where its life-blood flows strongest. During the day, it pulses with activity, servants hurrying to and fro, knights discussing strategy, merchants displaying their wares, children playing games among the rushes. But now, in the deep quiet of the night, it rests like a great heart between beats, gathering strength for the morning's renewal. As you stand there, surrounded by the gentle ghosts of the evening's warmth and fellowship, you feel the profound peace that comes from being truly safe, truly home. The thick walls that surround you have stood for generations, and they will stand for generations more. They have weathered storms and sieges, celebration and sorrow, and they remain solid and dependable as the earth itself. The embers in the great hearth pulse gently, like a sleeping dragon's breath, casting dancing shadows that seem to nod and sway in sleepy contentment. Soon, the servants will rise and coax these embers back to flame, preparing for another day of warmth and light and life. But for now, in this perfect moment of stillness, the great hall keeps its quiet vigil, watching over the sleeping castle like a gentle guardian, holding the memory of the day that was and the promise of the day to come. High above the sleeping castle, a solitary figure walks the ramparts. His footsteps, wrapped in cloth to muffle their sound, make a soft, rhythmic patter on the cold stone. The watchman's name is Willem, though in the darkness of his solitary patrol, names seem to matter less than the steady rhythm of his duty. He has walked these walls for 7 years now, ever since his father grew too old to climb the narrow stone steps that lead to the battlements. The route is as familiar to him as the lines on his own palm. Every loose stone, every gap in the mortar, every place where the wind cuts through with particular sharpness. His breath forms small clouds in the cold air, visible for just a moment before dissolving into the vast darkness that surrounds the castle. The night is clear, and the stars above shine with an intensity that those who live in more recent times can barely imagine. Without the glow of 1,000 lights to dim their brilliance, the stars spread across the sky like scattered diamonds on black velvet, so bright and numerous that they seem almost close enough to touch. Willem pauses at the first corner of his circuit, where the north wall meets the east. From here, he can see across the valley to the dark line of the forest, mysterious and impenetrable in the moonlight. During the day, that forest provides game for the castle's table and wood for its fires. But at night, it becomes something else entirely, a place of shadows and possibilities, where the imagination can conjure all manner of creatures and dangers. The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it the scent of distant rain and the green smell of growing things. Willem pulls his thick woolen cloak more tightly around his shoulders. The cloak is a deep brown, almost black in the darkness, and it helps him blend into the shadows as he moves along the wall. This is intentional. A watchman who can be easily seen is a watchman who can be easily targeted by enemies lurking in the darkness beyond. Below him, the castle courtyard lies in peaceful shadow. The well at its center is a dark circle, like a sleeping eye. During the day, that well is the scene of constant activity. Servants drawing water, children playing around its edge, horses being watered after long rides. But now it rests in perfect stillness, its depths reflecting the stars like a mirror held up to the sky. As Willem continues his slow circuit, his eyes constantly scan the horizon. He looks for the telltale glint of metal that might betray an approaching enemy, for the flicker of torches that might signal a night attack, for any movement that seems out of place in the natural rhythm of the night. But more often than not, what he sees is simply the peaceful darkness of a world at rest. The responsibility weighs on him, not as a burden, but as a sacred trust. Within these walls, dozens of people sleep in peace, trusting that Willem and the other watchmen will keep them safe through the dark hours. There's the Lord and his lady, of course, but also the servants, the children, the elderly, the sick, all of them vulnerable in their sleep, all of them depending on his vigilance. At the eastern corner, Willem pauses again. This is where the wall offers the best view of the main road that leads to the castle. During times of war, this road might carry enemy forces under cover of darkness. Even in times of peace, it might bring bandits or wild animals or other dangers that threaten the safety of those within the walls. Willem's eyes trace the pale ribbon of the road as it winds through the valley, but tonight it lies empty and still. The tower that rises at this corner of the wall is where the horn is kept, the great curved horn that will sound the alarm if danger approaches. Willem runs his hand along its smooth surface, feeling the coolness of the brass beneath his fingers. He has sounded this horn only twice in his 7 years of service. Once when a band of raiders approached in the pre-dawn darkness, and once when a fire broke out in the village below. Both times, its deep, resonant call cut through the night like a blade, bringing the castle instantly to life. As he moves along the southern wall, Willem can see the village spread out below. The houses are dark, their inhabitants long since abed. Here and there, A thin wisp of smoke rises from a chimney, evidence of banked fires that will be coaxed back to life in the morning. The village depends on the castle for protection, just as the castle depends on the village for food and labor. They are bound together by bonds of duty and mutual need that have existed for generations. A barn owl calls from somewhere in the darkness, its voice haunting and beautiful. Willem smiles slightly at the sound. He has come to know all the night sounds of this place. The owls and the nightjars, the distant howl of wolves in the deep forest, the rustle of small creatures in the grass beyond the walls. These sounds have become his companions during the long, quiet hours of his watch. The western wall offers a view of the castle's gardens and orchards. Even in the darkness, Willem can make out the neat rows of vegetables and herbs, the carefully tended fruit trees, the herb garden where the castle's healer grows her medicines. By day, these gardens buzz with activity, but now they rest in the moonlight, their leaves whispering softly in the breeze. Willem's cloak flutters behind him as he walks, and he adjusts his grip on the long spear he carries. The spear is both a weapon and a staff, helping him maintain his balance on the narrow walkway atop the wall. Its iron point gleams dully in the starlight, and its wooden shaft, worn smooth by countless hands, feels warm and familiar in his grasp. At the northwest corner, where his circuit began, Willem pauses for a longer rest. Here, a small wooden stool has been placed in the shelter of the tower, and he sits for a moment, allowing his tired legs a brief respite. From this vantage point, he can see the entire sweep of the valley, the dark bulk of the mountains beyond, and the river that winds like a silver thread through the landscape. The quiet is so profound that Willem can hear his own heartbeat, can hear the soft whisper of his own breathing. In this stillness, he feels connected to something larger than himself, to the long line of watchmen who have walked these walls before him, to the generations of people who have found safety within these stones, to the ancient rhythm of night and day that governs all life. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, Willem feels as though he is the only person awake in the entire world. The feeling is not lonely, it is peaceful, almost sacred. He is the guardian of their dreams, the keeper of their safety, the sentinel who stands between the sleeping castle and whatever dangers the darkness might hold. As the night deepens, Willem continues his patient circuit. North wall, east wall, south wall, west wall, and back again. His footsteps mark the passage of time, steady and reassuring as the tick of a great clock. The stars will slowly overhead, marking their own ancient paths across the sky. The moon, now high and bright, casts everything in silver light, transforming the familiar castle into something magical and otherworldly. In a few hours, the eastern sky will begin to lighten with the first hint of dawn. Willem's watch will end, and he will make his way down the narrow stone steps to his simple quarters, where he will sleep until the afternoon. Another watchman will take his place, continuing the ancient vigil that keeps the castle safe. But for now, in this deep quiet of the night, Willem walks his circuit alone, his cloaked figure moving steadily along the ancient stones, his eyes scanning the peaceful darkness, his presence a comfort to all who sleep within the protection of these walls. The night is long, but Willem is patient. He has walked these walls for 7 years, and if God wills it, he will walk them for 7 more. In the rhythm of his footsteps, in the steadiness of his vigil, there is a peace that runs deeper than sleep, a security that comes from knowing that someone is always watching, always ready, always there. Sleep in a medieval castle was rarely a private affair. Let's peek quietly into the different chambers, where dreams unfolded in the shared darkness. The corridors that lead to the sleeping quarters are narrow and cool, their stone walls worn smooth by centuries of passing hands. As you move through these passageways, your footsteps echo softly, the sound muffled by the thick tapestries that hang at intervals along the walls. These tapestries serve a dual purpose. They add warmth and color to the austere stone corridors, and they help to deaden sound, allowing the sleepers beyond to rest undisturbed. The first chamber we encounter belongs to the lord and lady of the castle. Heavy oak doors, reinforced with iron bands, stand slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of the private world within. The chamber is larger than any other sleeping space in the castle, befitting the status of its occupants. Yet even here, privacy is a relative concept. The great bed dominates the room, its frame carved from solid oak and draped with heavy curtains of deep blue wool. These curtains can be drawn completely closed, creating a private sanctuary within the larger chamber. The bed itself is a marvel of medieval comfort, a thick mattress stuffed with goose down and sweet herbs, covered with linen sheets that were woven in the castle's own workshops and bleached white as snow in the summer sun. But even in this most private of spaces, the lord and lady are not alone. At the foot of their bed, on simple pallets spread across the floor, sleep their most trusted servants. There's Margaret, the lady's personal maid, who has served the family for 20 years and knows every preference, every habit, every whispered secret. Beside her lies Thomas, the lord's body servant, who helps him dress each morning and tends to his armor and weapons with the devotion of a priest tending an altar. These servants sleep lightly, ready to respond to any need that might arise in the night. If the lady should call for water, or if the lord should require assistance, they will be instantly awake and ready to serve. Their presence is both practical and comforting. In an age when dangers could strike without warning, having trusted allies within arm's reach provided a sense of security that even the strongest castle walls could not match. Beyond the lord's chamber, we move through another corridor to reach the solar, the private quarters reserved for the lady of the castle and her female attendants. Here, the atmosphere is softer, more intimate than the masculine domains of the castle. The walls are hung with fine tapestries depicting scenes of courtly love and garden parties, and the air carries the faint scent of lavender and rosewater. Several narrow beds line the walls of the solar, each occupied by one of the lady's attendants. These young women, daughters of minor nobles sent to serve and learn the ways of courtly life, sleep peacefully under woolen blankets dyed in gentle colors. Soft blues and greens, warm yellows and roses. Their breathing creates a gentle symphony in the darkness, occasionally interrupted by the soft rustle of someone turning in their sleep or the whispered fragment of a dream. At the center of the solar stands a small brazier, its coals banked for the night, but still radiating a gentle warmth that takes the chill off the stone chamber. Near the brazier, a wooden stand holds a basin and ewer for washing, and beside it, a small table where prayer books and personal treasures are kept safe through the night. Moving deeper into the castle, we come to the barracks where the soldiers sleep. This is a long, narrow room with small windows set high in the walls. The floor is covered with straw pallets arranged in neat rows, each one occupied by a man-at-arms or a knight in service to the lord. The air here is thick with the scent of leather, wool, and the natural musk of men who spend their days in training and patrol. The soldiers sleep fully clothed, their swords within easy reach. Even in sleep, they remain ready for action, for in times of war or danger, they might be called upon to defend the castle at a moment's notice. Some sleep on their backs, snoring softly, while others curl on their sides, their hands unconsciously reaching for the familiar comfort of their weapon's hilt. Here and there among the soldiers, you might spot a page or squire, young boys learning the ways of knighthood. They sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of youth, exhausted by days filled with training, study, and service. Their faces, relaxed in sleep, show the innocence that their daytime duties often require them to hide behind a mask of grown-up responsibility. In another part of the castle, we find the servants' quarters, a series of small, cramped chambers where the castle's workforce finds what rest they can. The cook sleeps here, his large frame barely fitting on his narrow bed, his dreams perhaps filled with the elaborate feasts he creates each day. Nearby, The grooms rest after their long hours tending to the castle's horses, their hands still smelling of hay and leather even in sleep. The castle's children have their own sleeping arrangements, determined by their age and status. The youngest sleep with their mothers or nurses, curled up in the warmth and safety of familiar arms. Older children might share beds with their siblings, whispering stories and secrets in the darkness until sleep finally claims them. In the nursery, where the Lord's own children sleep, a nurse keeps vigil through the night. She sits in a wooden chair beside the children's beds, her own sleep light and easily broken by the slightest sound from her charges. The children sleep peacefully, surrounded by their few precious toys: wooden horses, cloth dolls, simple games carved from wood and bone. The guest chambers, when occupied, house visiting nobles and their retinues. These rooms are furnished with the castle's finest beds and linens, a mark of hospitality and respect for important visitors. The guests sleep in comfort, though perhaps not as deeply as they would in their own homes. For even the most luxurious guest chamber cannot entirely dispel the feeling of being in an unfamiliar place. In the deepest part of the night, when sleep is heaviest and dreams are most vivid, the castle's sleeping quarters become a collection of private worlds. Behind each closed door, beneath each woolen blanket, individual dreams unfold. Dreams of home and family, of adventure and glory, of love and loss, of fears faced and victories won. The castle's cats, those independent creatures who serve as the first line of defense against rats and mice, have found their own sleeping spots throughout the quarters. They curl up in warm corners on abandoned clothing, or sometimes even on the beds themselves, their soft purring adding another layer to the gentle symphony of the sleeping castle. As the night deepens, the temperature drops, and sleepers unconsciously pull their blankets closer. The shared warmth of bodies in close quarters becomes a comfort, a reminder that even in the vast stone fortress, human companionship provides the truest security. In the morning, they will wake to their separate duties and stations, but for now, in the democracy of sleep, they are simply people finding rest and peace in the safety of their shared sanctuary. If you listen closely, the medieval night is not truly silent. It has its own quiet music, a tapestry of soft, intermittent sounds that tell the story of the life within. In the deep stillness of the castle night, your ears become attuned to subtleties that the bustling day would drown completely. The silence is not empty. It is full, rich with the gentle symphony of a living fortress at rest. Each sound, no matter how small, carries meaning and tells its own quiet story in the darkness. From somewhere in the upper chambers comes the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping lord, a sound so steady and reassuring that it seems to set the tempo for all the other night sounds. His breathing is deep and measured, the breath of a man who sleeps with a clear conscience, secure in his stone sanctuary. Occasionally, this rhythm is punctuated by a gentle snore, a sound that somehow manages to be both human and comforting in the vast stone spaces. In the solar, where the ladies sleep, you might hear the whisper of linen against skin as someone turns in their sleep, or the soft sigh of a dreamer lost in pleasant visions. Sometimes, there's the gentle rustle of a prayer book's pages as someone wakes briefly to offer a midnight devotion before drifting back to sleep. The sounds here are delicate, feminine, like the flutter of bird wings or the whisper of silk. From the soldiers' barracks comes a different music altogether. Here, the breathing is heavier, more varied. Some of the men sleep quietly, their warriors' discipline extending even to their rest. Others snore with impressive volume, their exhausted bodies demanding the deep, restorative sleep that comes after long days of training and patrol. Occasionally, one of the younger soldiers might call out in his sleep, perhaps reliving a battle or dreaming of home, his voice quickly muffled by the thick stone walls. The sound of shifting straw is constant but subtle throughout the castle. Every movement on the straw-filled mattresses and pallets creates a gentle rustling, like the sound of wind through a field of grain. This rustling has its own rhythm, quick and sharp when someone turns suddenly, slow and drawn out when someone settles more comfortably into their bedding. It's a sound that speaks of humble comfort, of making do with simple materials that nevertheless provide warmth and rest. In the kitchens, even though the cooking fires have been banked for the night, there are still sounds to be heard. The great wooden beams creak softly as they cool from the day's heat. Somewhere in the pantry, there's the almost inaudible scratch of tiny claws on stone. A mouse, perhaps, brave enough to venture out in search of crumbs. The kitchen cat, keeper of the grain stores, occasionally shifts position with a soft thud of paws on flagstone, ever alert even in her drowsiness. Water plays its own quiet song throughout the castle. From the well in the courtyard comes the occasional echo of a drop falling into the depths below, a sound so faint it's almost imagined, yet somehow audible in the profound quiet. In the upper chambers, the gentle patter of condensation dripping from stone walls creates an irregular percussion, each drop marking time in its own patient way. The wind, that constant companion of high places, weaves through the castle with varying voices. Sometimes it whispers through the narrow arrow slits, creating a sound like distant conversation. Other times it finds the gaps between stones, producing a low, almost musical humming that rises and falls with the wind's strength. When it encounters the banners and tapestries, it creates a soft flapping sound, rhythmic and soothing like the gentle applause of unseen hands. From the stables comes the occasional stamp of a hoof or the soft whicker of a dreaming horse. These sounds are warm and alive, reminding listeners that the castle is home not just to people, but to the noble beasts that serve them. Sometimes there's the rustle of hay as a horse shifts position, or the gentle sound of contented chewing as one of the animals enjoys a midnight snack. The castle's timber framework, that intricate skeleton of oak beams and joints that supports the stone walls, creates its own quiet symphony. Wood expands and contracts with changes in temperature and humidity, producing soft creaks and groans that speak of the living nature of even the most solid construction. These sounds have their own rhythm, more frequent in the early night as the wood cools from the day's warmth, then settling into an occasional whisper as the night deepens. In the chapel, where a lone candle burns before the altar, there might be the soft flutter of pages turning as a devout soul reads from a prayer book, or the whisper of knees against stone as someone kneels in private devotion. These sounds are hushed, reverent, adding a sacred dimension to the castle's nighttime chorus. Children's voices occasionally pierce the quiet, not loud enough to wake others, but audible to those who listen carefully. A child might call out softly for their mother, or laugh quietly at some dream adventure. These sounds are precious, innocent, reminding all who hear them of the future generations that these walls protect and shelter. The servants who must work through the night move with practiced quiet, but their presence is still felt in the gentle soundscape. There's the soft shuffle of cloth-wrapped feet on stone, the whisper of robes against doorways, the careful placement of a water jug, or the gentle closing of a door. These workers are the castle's silent guardians, moving like ghosts through the corridors to ensure that all is well. From the towers comes the sound of the night watch, not the heavy tread of marching feet, but the soft, cloth-muffled steps of guards moving carefully along the battlements. Sometimes there's the quiet scrape of leather against stone as a watchman leans against the wall to observe the countryside, or the soft whisper of a cloak moving in the wind. The castle's many doors and shutters contribute their own voices to the night. A loose shutter might tap gently against a window frame, creating a soft, irregular rhythm. A door might creak almost inaudibly on its hinges as it moves slightly in a draft. These sounds are never alarming. They're too familiar, too much a part of the castle's normal voice to cause concern. In the depths of winter, there might be the soft patter of snow against the windows, or the gentle groan of roof timbers bearing the weight of accumulated snow. In summer, there could be the distant roll of thunder, so far away it's felt more than heard, or the gentle drumming of rain on. Even the castle's cats contribute to the nighttime symphony. There's the soft thud of paws landing after a jump, the whisper of fur against stone, or the occasional purr of contentment. These feline residents move through the darkness with silent grace. Their presence felt more than seen. Their quiet sounds a reminder of the domestic peace that reigns within the fortress walls. The most beautiful sound of all might be the quiet breathing of children, innocent and peaceful in their sleep. This sound seems to bless the entire castle, a reminder of the life and hope that these ancient walls protect. It's a sound that makes all the vigilance, all the watchfulness, all the careful security worthwhile. As the night deepens and approaches its darkest hour, even these gentle sounds seem to soften and fade. The castle settles into its deepest quiet, that profound peace that comes in the hours before dawn. Yet even in this deepest silence, the trained ear can still detect the subtle signs of life. The whisper of breath, the soft rustle of sleep, the gentle heartbeat of a community at rest. This is the true music of the medieval night. Not the silence of emptiness, but the rich, quiet symphony of life continuing peacefully within the protection of ancient stone walls. Each sound, no matter how small, is a note in this gentle composition, creating a lullaby that has soothed countless generations to sleep within these walls. Even in the deepest hours of the night, one place in the castle remains awake in spirit. The chapel, a pocket of sacred silence, holds its vigil until the morning light. The chapel stands apart from the rest of the castle, not in location but in atmosphere. While the other chambers settle into the comfortable rhythms of sleep and rest, this holy space maintains a different kind of quiet, one charged with prayer and reverence, where the boundary between the earthly and the divine seems thinner, more permeable in the darkness. Heavy wooden doors, worn smooth by countless hands and marked with the sign of the cross, stand slightly ajar. Through the gap, a thin line of golden light spills into the corridor. The warm glow of candles that burn throughout the night, never allowed to be extinguished completely. This light is not bright enough to disturb the sleepers in nearby chambers, but it serves as a beacon of hope and continuity in the encompassing darkness. As you slip through the doorway, the change in atmosphere is immediate and profound. The air here is different, cooler, certainly, for stone walls hold the chill, but also somehow more still, more expectant. It carries the lingering scent of incense from the evening's vespers, mixed with the clean smell of beeswax from the burning candles and the faint, sweet fragrance of the herbs that are scattered among the rushes on the floor. The chapel is not large by the standards of great cathedrals, but within the confines of the castle, it feels spacious and significant. The vaulted ceiling arches overhead, disappearing into shadows that seem to reach toward heaven itself. Along the walls, narrow windows of stained glass catch and hold the candlelight, transforming it into pools of colored radiance. Deep blues and rich reds, golden yellows and forest greens that seem to glow with their own inner light. At the far end of the chapel, the altar stands like an island of light in the darkness. Here, the concentration of candles is greatest. Tall beeswax tapers in ornate holders, their flames steady and unwavering in the still air. The altar itself is covered with a cloth of pure linen, embroidered with golden thread in patterns that tell the story of faith and redemption. Upon it rest the sacred vessels, a chalice of silver that catches the light like captured stars, a paten of gold that seems to hold warmth even in the cool air. Before the altar, a single figure kneels in prayer. Brother Francis, the castle's chaplain, maintains his vigil through the darkest hours of the night. His brown robes blend with the shadows, making him appear almost as a part of the chapel itself, a living extension of its sacred purpose. His hands are clasped before him, his head bowed in contemplation, his lips moving silently in prayers that have been offered in this place for generations. The chaplain's presence is both comforting and inspiring. In a world where darkness can bring fear and uncertainty, his steadfast vigil represents the triumph of faith over doubt, of light over darkness. His breathing is so quiet as to be almost inaudible, but the very fact of his presence fills the chapel with a sense of protection and blessing. Along the walls of the chapel, wooden pews provide seating for the castle's inhabitants during daily services. In the darkness, these pews seem to hold the memory of all the prayers that have been offered from them. Prayers of thanksgiving for victories won, prayers of petition for protection and guidance, prayers of mourning for loved ones lost, prayers of hope for the future. The wood itself, darkened by age and polished by countless hands, seems to whisper with the voices of all who have sought comfort and solace in this sacred space. In alcoves along the side walls, smaller shrines honor particular saints and offer focused places for private devotion. Each shrine is lit by its own small candle, creating intimate pools of light that invite quiet contemplation. Here, a wooden statue of Saint Michael, patron of warriors, stands with his sword raised in eternal vigilance. There, a gentle carving of the Virgin Mary cradles the Christ child, her face serene and compassionate in the candlelight. These shrines are often visited by castle inhabitants who have particular needs or concerns. The knights might pray to Saint Michael before a battle, while the women of the castle often seek the intercession of the Virgin Mary for protection of their families. Even in the deep of night, you might occasionally see a shadowy figure slip into the chapel to light a candle or whisper an urgent prayer before returning to their duties or their rest. The chapel's floor is laid with flat stones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps and knees. Here and there, brass plates mark the burial places of former lords of the castle and their families, their names and dates barely visible in the flickering candlelight. These memorials serve as reminders of the continuity of faith and the eternal nature of the hope that this chapel represents. The sound within the chapel is different from anywhere else in the castle. The stone walls seem to absorb and soften every noise, creating an acoustic environment that enhances the sense of reverence and peace. When Brother Francis whispers his prayers, the words seem to hang in the air, echoing softly from the vaulted ceiling before fading into a silence that feels full rather than empty. Occasionally, the chapel door opens to admit another night visitor. Perhaps it's a servant who cannot sleep, troubled by worries or responsibilities, who comes seeking the comfort of prayer. Or it might be one of the knights, awakened by a disturbing dream of battle, who kneels briefly before the altar to request protection for himself and his brothers in arms. These visitors move quietly, respectfully, aware that they are entering a space dedicated to something greater than their individual concerns. The stained glass windows, though dark from the outside, seem to hold light within themselves when viewed from inside the chapel. Even by candlelight, the rich colors glow softly, depicting scenes from the life of Christ and the saints. During the day, these windows blaze with sunlight, filling the chapel with rainbow light. But even in the darkness, they retain a sense of warmth and beauty that speaks to the soul. Near the altar, a small wooden lectern holds a magnificent illuminated manuscript, the castle's copy of the Gospels. The pages are made of the finest vellum, and the text is written in careful script by monks who devoted their lives to preserving the sacred words. The initial letters of each chapter are decorated with intricate designs in gold and brilliant colors, small masterpieces of art that glorify the divine message they contain. The chapel's bell tower, accessible through a narrow stone stairway, houses the bells that mark the hours of prayer throughout the day. Even at night, the largest bell tolls the midnight hour, its deep, resonant voice carrying across the castle and the surrounding countryside. The sound is not harsh or alarming. Instead, it's comforting, a reminder that time continues its eternal passage under the watchful eye of divine providence. In the darkest hour of the night, when the rest of the castle sleeps most deeply, the chapel seems to pulse with a quiet energy. It's as if the accumulated prayers of generations have soaked into the very stones, creating a reservoir of faith that sustains all who dwell within the castle walls. The candlelight flickers but never fails, the prayers continue in whispered voices, and the sense of divine presence provides comfort and strength that no earthly fortress could match. As Brother Francis rises from his knees and moves quietly to tend the candles, checking each flame to ensure it burns steadily through the night, his movements are those of a man performing a sacred ritual. He knows that his vigil serves not just his own spiritual needs, but the needs of everyone in the castle. His prayers rise on behalf of the sleeping lord and lady, the brave knights, the hard-working servants, the innocent children, all those whose lives intersect within these ancient walls. The chapel at midnight is more than just a room for worship. It's the spiritual heart of the castle, the place where the community's faith is most concentrated and most powerful. In its candlelit peace, the concerns of the day fade away, replaced by a deeper understanding of the eternal truths that give life meaning and purpose. Here, in this sacred darkness, the soul finds rest more profound than any physical sleep could provide. The castle's stomach, the kitchen, now rests. The clamor of pots and the shouts of cooks have given way to a warm, fragrant stillness. The kitchen stands in peaceful contrast to its daytime chaos. Where once the air rang with the clash of knives on wooden boards, the sizzle of meat over flame, and the urgent calls of cooks coordinating the preparation of elaborate feasts, now there is only the gentle whisper of settling embers and the soft creak of cooling wood. The great hearth that dominates one wall has been carefully banked for the night. The massive logs that roared with flame during the day's cooking have been arranged just so, covered with ash to slow their burning, while preserving the coals beneath. These glowing embers cast a warm, orange light that dances across the stone walls, creating shadows that seem to nod and sway in sleepy contentment. The heat radiating from the banked fire keeps the kitchen warmer than any other room in the castle, making it a refuge from the night's chill. Along the walls, copper pots and iron cauldrons hang from wooden pegs, their surfaces gleaming dully in the firelight. These vessels, which earlier held bubbling stews and roasting meats, now rest empty and clean, ready for tomorrow's labors. The largest cauldron, big enough for a man to stand in, hangs like a bronze moon in the flickering light, its interior dark and mysterious. The great wooden tables that serve as the kitchen's workspace stretch across the center of the room like sleeping giants. Their surfaces, scarred by countless meals and marked by years of chopping, kneading, and preparing, have been scrubbed clean with coarse salt and sand until they gleam pale in the ember light. Here and there, the sweet smell of herbs lingers: rosemary and thyme, sage and parsley, their fragrance released by the day's crushing and chopping, now mingling with the warm air to create a perfume that speaks of comfort and nourishment. In the corner, the castle's ovens stand like small caves carved into the thick stone walls. Built into the very structure of the castle, these ovens can hold their heat for hours after the fires within them have died. Even now, they radiate warmth, their stone mouths glowing faintly with retained heat. Tomorrow's bread dough waits nearby, covered with clean linen cloths, rising slowly in the gentle warmth. The yeast works its quiet magic through the night, transforming simple flour and water into the staff of life that will feed the castle's inhabitants. The pantry, accessible through a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands, holds the castle's stores of food. Behind that door, in cool, dark chambers, barrels of salted pork and wheels of aging cheese wait patiently. Sacks of grain lean against the walls like sleeping sentries, while bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters, their concentrated essences ready to transform simple ingredients into flavorful meals. The pantry's thick walls and small windows keep the stored food cool and safe from spoilage, ensuring that the castle can feed its inhabitants even through the longest siege. Near the great hearth, a collection of wooden spoons and ladles hangs from a rack, their handles worn smooth by countless hands. These simple tools, carved from hard oak and ash, are the extensions of the cook's art, each one shaped by use to fit perfectly in its wielder's grip. In the firelight, they seem to hold the memory of all the stirring and tasting they have done, all the meals they have helped create. A large mortar and pestle, carved from a single block of granite, sits on one of the tables. Its bowl is stained with the colors of 1,000 spices: golden turmeric, red paprika, dark pepper, and its surface is smooth as silk from years of grinding. Even in the quiet night, it seems to hold the ghost of exotic fragrances, hints of distant lands and mysterious flavors that transform simple castle fare into something approaching magic. The kitchen stone floor, laid with flat flagstones, has been swept clean and scattered with fresh rushes mixed with sweet herbs. These rushes, changed daily, cushion the feet and help absorb the inevitable spills and splashes of a working kitchen. Now, in the peaceful night, they release their gentle fragrance with each small movement of air, adding another layer to the kitchen's complex perfume. Water barrels stand along one wall, their wooden staves dark with moisture. These barrels, filled fresh each day from the castle's well, provide the pure water essential for cooking and cleaning. The water within is cool and sweet, drawn from depths where it has been filtered through countless layers of stone and earth. A wooden dipper hangs from each barrel's rim, ready to provide refreshment for thirsty workers or to supply the precious liquid needed for tomorrow's cooking. In the corner where the kitchen meets the great hall, a small alcove holds the castle's collection of spices and seasonings. These precious substances, worth their weight in silver, are kept in small wooden boxes and pottery jars, each one carefully sealed to preserve its potency. Salt, the most precious of all, is stored in a locked chest, for it is not only essential for cooking but crucial for preserving meat through the long winter months. The kitchen's cat, a large tabby with battle-scarred ears and wise yellow eyes, has claimed her nighttime territory near the warm hearth. She sleeps curled in a tight ball, her fur rising and falling with each peaceful breath. During the day, she is the terror of mice and rats, but now she rests, confident that her very presence is enough to keep the rodents at bay. Her occasional purr adds a gentle rumble to the kitchen's quiet symphony. Bundles of firewood, cut to precise lengths and carefully stacked, line another wall. This wood, seasoned for months to burn clean and hot, represents hours of labor by the castle's woodsmen. Oak for the long, steady heat needed for roasting, ash for the quick, hot flames required for searing, and applewood for the sweet smoke that flavors the finest meats, each type carefully chosen for its specific culinary purpose. The great bellows that feeds air to the cooking fires hangs silent now, its leather sides relaxed and still. During the day, a kitchen boy worked this bellows constantly, sending streams of air to keep the fires burning bright and hot. Now it rests, waiting for tomorrow's renewal of the eternal cycle of cooking and eating that sustains the castle's life. As the night deepens, the kitchen settles further into its peaceful rest. The embers in the great hearth burn lower, their light growing softer and more orange. The stone walls, which absorbed heat throughout the day, now release it slowly, keeping the kitchen warm and comfortable through the coldest nights. This is the castle's most nurturing space, the place where simple ingredients are transformed into sustenance and comfort, where the alchemy of cooking creates not just food but community, not just meals but the bonds that hold the castle's inhabitants together as one great family. Not all work ended at sundown. For those who dealt in words and numbers, the night often offered the only true quiet for concentration. In a small chamber tucked away in one of the castle's towers, a single candle burned steadily, its flame unwavering in the still air. The light it casts is golden and warm, creating a small circle of illumination in the encompassing darkness. Within this pool of light, Brother Marcus, the castle's scribe and keeper of records, continues his patient work long after the rest of the castle has settled into sleep. The chamber is modest but perfectly suited to its purpose. The walls are lined with wooden shelves, each one carefully filled with scrolls, bound volumes, and loose sheets of parchment. These represent the accumulated knowledge and records of the castle. Account books tracking the harvest and expenditures, copies of important letters and documents, genealogies tracing the noble bloodlines, and precious manuscripts containing everything from religious texts to treatises on agriculture and warfare. Brother Marcus sits at a heavy wooden desk, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The desk is positioned to catch the best light from the narrow window during the day, but now, in the depth of night, it depends entirely on the steady flame of the thick beeswax candle that stands in an ornate brass holder. The candle is of the finest quality. Beeswax burns clean and bright, without the smoky flame and acrid smell of the tallow candles used elsewhere in the castle. Before him lies a sheet of parchment, its surface cream-colored and smooth as silk. This parchment, made from carefully prepared sheepskin, represents hours of skilled labor. The skin was soaked, scraped, stretched, and polished until it achieved the perfect texture for receiving ink. It is precious. Each sheet costs more than a common laborer earns in a week, and Brother Marcus treats it with the reverence it deserves. His quill pen, cut from the flight feather of a goose, rests easily in his long, ink-stained fingers. The pen has been carefully prepared, its tip cut to just the right angle and width to produce the elegant script that is Brother Marcus's pride. Beside the parchment sits a small pottery inkwell, filled with ink made from oak galls, iron, and gum arabic. A recipe passed down through generations of scribes and as closely guarded as any military secret. The work before him tonight is the castle's account book, a careful record of income and expenditure that will help the Lord manage his estates wisely. Each entry must be precise, each number clearly written, for mistakes in such records can lead to confusion, disputes, or even financial disaster. Brother Marcus writes in a clear, practiced hand, each letter formed with the precision of long experience. The numbers tell their own story of castle life. Here is the cost of grain purchased to supplement the harvest. There the payment made to traveling merchants for exotic spices and fine cloth. This entry records the wages paid to the castle's craftsmen, that won the cost of maintaining the horses and equipment. Through these careful notations, the entire economic life of the castle is preserved and understood. Occasionally, Brother Marcus pauses in his writing to consult another document. He might check a previous year's records to compare expenses, or refer to a letter from one of the Lord's other estates to verify a transaction. These moments of consultation require him to carefully move the candle to illuminate different parts of his workspace, always mindful of the precious documents that surround him and the ever-present danger of fire. The scribe's tools are arranged with meticulous care around his workspace. A ruler made of polished wood helps him keep his lines straight and his margins even. A small knife, sharp as a razor, is used to scrape away mistakes, for on parchment, errors must be carefully removed rather than simply crossed out. A pot of fine sand sits ready to sprinkle over wet ink, helping it dry quickly and preventing smudges that could ruin hours of careful work. Near his elbow stands a small brass cup filled with water, used for cleaning his pen and mixing different shades of ink. Brother Marcus is skilled in the preparation of inks, black for everyday writing, red for important headings and initial letters, even blue and gold for the most significant documents. Tonight, however, he works only in the deep black ink that flows smoothly from his pen and dries to a rich, permanent darkness. The silence of the night is broken only by the soft scratch of quill on parchment, a sound that has echoed through centuries wherever learned men have worked to preserve knowledge and maintain records. It is a sound that speaks of civilization, of the human desire to record and remember, to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. In this small chamber, far from the bustle of daily castle life, the important work of documentation continues. Brother Marcus wears a simple brown robe, its hood thrown back to allow the candlelight to illuminate his work clearly. His tonsure, the circular area of shaved scalp that marks him as a cleric, gleams in the gentle light. His face, lean and scholarly, shows the concentration of a man deeply absorbed in his task. Years of close work by candlelight have left their mark. He must hold the parchment close to see clearly, and his eyes water slightly in the flickering light. Despite the lateness of the hour, Brother Marcus shows no signs of fatigue. This work is his calling, his contribution to the smooth running of the castle and the preservation of knowledge. He finds a deep satisfaction in the formation of perfect letters, in the completion of accurate records, in the knowledge that his work will serve future generations long after he has joined his predecessors in the castle's chapel. The chamber itself reflects the careful, orderly mind of its occupant. Everything has its place. Quills are sorted by size and quality. Inkwells are arranged by color. Finished documents are carefully filed and labeled. This organization is not mere tidiness but necessity, for in the cramped space and uncertain light, disorder could lead to disaster. A small brazier in the corner provides additional warmth on the coldest nights. Tonight, it holds only glowing coals, their red light adding to the candle's golden glow and helping to keep the ink from thickening in the chill air. The combination of light sources creates a warm, intimate atmosphere that makes the small chamber feel like a sanctuary of learning and contemplation. As the night progresses and his work continues, Brother Marcus occasionally pauses to flex his fingers or roll his shoulders, working out the stiffness that comes from hunching over his desk. These brief respites allow him to appreciate the profound quiet of the night, the sense of being alone with important work while the rest of the world sleeps peacefully around him. The candle burns steadily, consuming itself in service to the light that makes the work possible. Brother Marcus has calculated its burning time carefully. It will last exactly as long as he needs to complete the evening's tasks. When the final entry is made and the ink has dried, he will carefully extinguish the flame and make his way through the dark corridors to his own simple sleeping chamber, satisfied with another night's contribution to the endless task of recording and preserving the story of human endeavor. Let us drift now to the stables, where the castle's noble beasts find their rest. The air here is earthy and warm, a mixture of hay, leather, and the gentle breathing of sleeping horses. Even in the deepest hours of the night, this place holds a special kind of peace, the quiet contentment of creatures who have worked hard and now rest easy. The stable doors are thick oak, weathered smooth by countless hands. As you step inside, your feet sink slightly into the soft bed of straw that covers the floor. The darkness here is different from the cold stone passages of the castle proper. It's a warmer darkness, alive with the soft rustle of animals shifting in their sleep and the occasional gentle whinny of a dreaming horse. In the finest stall, closest to the door where the stable master can keep watch, stands the Lord's great destrier. Even in sleep, he is magnificent, a towering beast of war, his coat a deep bay that gleams like polished wood even in the dim light. His massive head hangs low, his breathing deep and steady. One hind leg is cocked in the relaxed stance of a horse truly at peace. The chain mail barding that protects him in battle hangs on a wooden frame nearby, catching the faintest glimmer of moonlight that filters through the high windows. Listen, can you hear the soft shuffle of hooves on straw? A palfrey in the next stall stretches her neck over the wooden partition, her pale coat ghostly in the darkness. She's a gentle creature, bred for comfort rather than war, and her presence brings a softer energy to this place of noble beasts. Her eyes, large and liquid, blink slowly as she watches the shadows dance across the stable walls. The sweet scent of fresh hay mingles with the warm, familiar smell of horses and well-oiled leather. Above your head, the loft holds great bales of golden straw, their earthy fragrance drifting down like a benediction. The stable master's small chamber is tucked into one corner, and through his half-open door, you can hear his quiet snoring. A man who sleeps soundly because he knows his charges are safe. A barn cat picks her way delicately through the straw, her paws silent as she patrols for mice. She pauses to rub against the leg of a sleeping knight's horse, her purr a tiny engine of contentment in the darkness. The horse barely stirs, accustomed to this nightly ritual of feline affection. In the far corner, a young stable boy sleeps curled in the hay, his arms wrapped around a coarse woolen blanket. He chose to sleep here rather than in the servants' quarters, perhaps finding comfort in the presence of the animals he tends with such devotion. His breathing matches the rhythm of the horses around him, as if he's become part of their peaceful herd. The castle's mules and pack animals occupy the simpler stalls, their more modest accommodations no less comfortable. They too breathe easily in the darkness, their day's work of carrying supplies and provisions now just a memory. A donkey's soft bray echoes briefly, then fades into the night's gentle symphony. Above, the rafters creak slightly as a night wind moves through the castle walls. But here in the stables, protected by thick stone and heavy timber, the sound is muffled and distant. The animals feel safe, sheltered not just from the elements, but from the darker fears that populate the medieval night. In this warm cocoon of hay and horseflesh, peace reigns supreme. As you stand in this sanctuary of sleeping beasts, you feel the deep contentment that comes from witnessing creatures at perfect rest. Their breathing becomes your breathing, their peace becomes your peace. The stable slumber wraps around you like a warm blanket, and you find yourself growing drowsy in the best possible way. To the medieval mind, the night was not just an absence of light. It was a realm of its own, filled with unseen possibilities, both wondrous and deeply unsettling. As you continue your quiet journey through the sleeping castle, you begin to understand why these thick stone walls meant so much more than simple shelter. They were a barrier against the unknown terrors that walked in darkness. Beyond the castle gates, in the deep forest that presses close to the outer walls, the medieval imagination populated every shadow with creatures that defied understanding. The darkness was not empty. It was full, teeming with spirits and demons, wild beasts and wilder men. To step outside the protective circle of the castle's walls after sunset was to enter a world where the natural order broke down, where anything might be possible. Listen to the wind as it moves through the arrow slits, carrying with it the distant sounds of the night forest. An owl calls, its voice hollow and otherworldly. To medieval ears, this might not be just a bird, but a harbinger of death, a creature that moved between the world of the living and the realm of spirits. The hoot echoes off the stone walls and fades into silence, leaving behind a sense of something vast and unknowable pressing against the castle's defenses. In the chapel, a monk keeps his vigil partly from devotion, but partly from the comfort of sacred space in the dark hours. His prayers are both communion with the divine and protection against the malevolent forces that grow stronger as the night deepens. The candles he keeps burning are not just for light. They are tiny beacons of holiness, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. A servant wakes in the communal sleeping chamber, her heart racing from a dream she cannot quite remember. She pulls her rough blanket closer and whispers a prayer her grandmother taught her, words meant to keep evil spirits at bay. Around her, others sleep fitfully, their dreams touched by the fears that daylight usually keeps locked away. The darkness seems to seep through the very stones, carrying with it the collective nightmares of an age that saw demons in every shadow. Up on the battlements, the night watchman grips his spear a little tighter as something moves in the forest beyond the moat. It might be a deer or a wolf, or it might be something else entirely. Something that walks on two legs but is no longer quite human. His training tells him to stand firm, to trust in the strength of the walls and the brightness of his torch. But his imagination, fed by a lifetime of stories told around winter fires, peoples the darkness with creatures that laugh at walls and mock the light. The castle's cats are more active now, their eyes glowing like tiny green lanterns as they patrol the corridors. To the medieval mind, cats were creatures of mystery, beings that could see things human eyes could not. Their sudden freezing, their apparent staring at empty air, their midnight yowling. All of this suggested they were witness to a world beyond human perception. Tonight, as always, they serve as unwitting guardians against things that might slip through the cracks between worlds. In the Lord's chamber, even the master of the castle feels the weight of the darkness pressing against his windows. The heavy tapestries that hang on the walls seem to move in the candlelight, creating shapes that might be innocent shadows or might be something more. He knows these fears are likely foolish, but knowledge does not always calm the heart. The night has its own logic, its own truths that daylight cannot touch. But here, within these walls, surrounded by the faithful and the faithful's prayers, protected by iron and stone and the blessing of the church, there is safety. The castle is not just a fortress against human enemies. It is a sanctuary against the fears that bloom in darkness. The very stones seem to radiate protection, blessed by generations of prayers and strengthened by the collective will of all who shelter within. As you move through these quiet halls, you feel that protection settling around you like a cloak. The fears of the dark ages become distant things, stories told by others in another time. The darkness outside may be full of terrors, but the darkness within these walls is full of peace. Here, sleep comes easily, dreams are gentle, and the morning light will surely come again to drive away the shadows and their imagined inhabitants. The medieval night was a time of fears, yes, but also of profound faith in the power of sanctuary, of community, of the strength that comes from standing together against the unknown. And in that faith, in that togetherness, there was a deep and abiding peace that no darkness could truly. Beneath the castle, far from the moonlight and the stars, lies a place of profound stillness. The dungeons, even when empty, hold a heavy, silent memory of all who have passed through their stone embrace. Tonight, as we descend the narrow, winding stairs carved into the living rock, we enter a realm where time itself seems to pause and hold its breath. The air grows cooler with each step downward, carrying with it the deep, mineral scent of earth and stone that has never seen sunlight. Your fingers trail along the rough-hewn wall, feeling the tool marks left by masons centuries ago, men who carved these chambers from the bedrock with nothing but iron chisels and infinite patience. The stone is damp to the touch, weeping tiny droplets of moisture that have been gathering and falling in the same slow rhythm since the day these walls were first carved. At the bottom of the stairs, the dungeon spreads out in a series of chambers connected by low, arched passages. The darkness here is absolute, a darkness so complete it seems to have weight and substance. It presses against your skin like cool velvet, wrapping around you with the patience of centuries. This is not the warm, living darkness of the stable or the comfortable shadows of the sleeping chambers above. This is the darkness of the deep earth, ancient and eternal. The silence is equally profound. No sound from the world above penetrates these depths. The laughter from the great hall, the footsteps of the night watch, the gentle sounds of sleeping animals. All of it fades away as if it belongs to another world entirely. Down here, in this cathedral of stone and silence, you exist in a pocket outside of time, where the only sounds are the ones you bring with you. The whisper of your breath, the soft rustle of your clothing, the careful placement of your feet on the worn stone floor. Most of the cells stand empty tonight, their heavy wooden doors hanging open like dark mouths. Iron rings are set into the walls, and thick chains hang motionless in the still air. But there is no sense of horror here, no feeling of terror or despair. Instead, there is simply absence, a waiting quality, as if these chambers exist in a state of perpetual pause, neither welcoming nor rejecting, simply being. In one cell, water drips steadily from a crack in the ceiling, each drop falling into a small pool that has worn a perfect circle in the stone floor. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, a liquid metronome marking time in a place where time has little meaning. Drop, drop, drop. The sound echoes softly off the walls and fades into the greater silence, only to be renewed moments later as another droplet forms and falls. The walls themselves seem to breathe with moisture, their surfaces slick with condensation that never quite dries. Minerals have painted subtle patterns across the stone, streaks of white and green and pale yellow that catch what little light exists and reflect it back in gentle, muted tones. These are the decorations of deep time, art created by water and stone working together across decades and centuries. In the largest chamber, what might once have been a guardroom, a single bench carved from stone sits against the wall. Its surface is worn smooth by countless hands and bodies, polished by use into something almost comfortable. Here, a guard might have sat through long, quiet hours, listening to the absolute silence and feeling the weight of all that stone above his head. The bench remains, patient and solid, waiting for someone who may never come. There is a strange peace in this emptiness, this stillness. The dungeons hold no fear tonight, only a deep, abiding quiet that seems to seep into your very bones. The oppressive weight of the stone above becomes comforting rather than crushing, like being wrapped in layers upon layers of the heaviest, warmest blankets. You are held by the earth itself, cradled in stone arms that have embraced this space for longer than human memory. A thin stream of water runs along one wall, following a channel carved by countless years of patient flow. It moves without sound, appearing from darkness and disappearing into darkness, a liquid ghost that connects these buried chambers to some distant, underground source. Following its path with your eyes, you lose yourself in its gentle, purposeful movement. Water that has been making this same journey for decades, perhaps centuries, indifferent to the rise and fall of kingdoms above. The air is so still that you can feel your own warmth radiating from your skin, creating a tiny sphere of comfort in the cool embrace of the stone. Your breathing seems loud in this perfect silence, but even it soon becomes part of the dungeon's rhythm, another small sound absorbed into the vast, patient quiet. In the deepest chamber, furthest from the stairs, the silence is so complete it becomes almost musical. Your ears, straining for any sound, begin to create their own, a soft, high ringing that might be the sound of absolute quiet itself, or perhaps the whisper of your own blood moving through your veins. This is the silence that existed before the castle was built, the silence that will remain long after its stones have crumbled back to earth. Here, in this place carved from the bones of the world, you understand something about the nature of rest, of true stillness. The dungeon's darkness is not the absence of light. It is the presence of something deeper, older, more fundamental. It is the darkness of the womb, of the earth, of the spaces between stars. It is the darkness from which all things emerge and to which all things return. The stone walls hold secrets, but they are not dark secrets or terrible secrets. They are the secrets of patience, of endurance, of the slow, inexorable passage of time. They have witnessed the rise and fall of generations, the changing of seasons, the cycle of life and death and renewal that governs all things. And through it all, they have remained constant, steady, reliable, a foundation upon which everything else is built. As you stand in this chamber of profound stillness, you feel your own thoughts beginning to slow, to settle like sediment in still water. The concerns of the daylight world seem distant and unimportant. The urgency of tomorrow's tasks fades into irrelevance. There is only this moment, this breath, this perfect, complete silence that asks nothing of you except that you exist within it. The dungeon's stillness begins to work its way into your muscles, your bones, your very soul. You feel yourself becoming part of this ancient quiet, this deep peace that has existed since the first stone was laid upon stone. Your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of the falling water drops. Your breathing deepens and becomes as measured as the movement of the underground stream. This is not the sleep of exhaustion or the rest of the weary. This is something deeper, more fundamental. The profound stillness that exists at the heart of all things, the quiet center around which the busy world revolves. Here, in the deepest part of the castle, in the most silent of all its chambers, you have found the source of all rest, all peace, all gentle letting go. The stone walls seem to pulse gently with their own slow heartbeat, the rhythm of deep earth and deeper time. And you, standing in their embrace, feel yourself becoming part of that rhythm, part of that endless, patient dance of stone and water, darkness and silence, time and eternity. The dungeon stillness claims you, gently and completely, and you surrender to it with the grateful sigh of one who has finally, truly, come home to rest. In another part of the castle, a softer world exists. The solar, the private space of the lady and her attendants, has its own quiet, nocturnal rhythm that flows like a gentle stream through the darker currents of the night. Here, in chambers warmed by carefully tended braziers and softened by hangings of fine wool and linen, the feminine heart of the castle beats with its own particular grace. The lady's solar occupies the upper floor of one of the castle's towers, its windows facing east to catch the first light of dawn. But now, in the deep hours of the night, those windows are shuttered against the cold, and the chamber glows with the warm, golden light of several carefully placed candles. The air is fragrant with herbs, lavender and rosemary, chamomile and sweet woodruff, that have been sewn into small sachets and tucked among the linens and hangings. 3 women keep vigil here while their mistress sleeps. The lady herself rests in the adjoining chamber, her breathing deep and peaceful behind a curtain of rich blue, wool embroidered with silver thread. But her attendants maintain their quiet watch, their hands busy with the endless work that keeps a great household running smoothly, their voices occasionally rising in soft murmurs of conversation that barely disturb the night's peace. Margaret, the eldest of the 3, sits closest to the largest brazier, her graying hair covered by a simple linen coif that frames her weathered but kind face. In her lap lies a piece of fine linen, and her needle moves with the steady rhythm of decades of practice, creating delicate whitework embroidery that will eventually grace an altar cloth for the castle's chapel. Her stitches are so small, so perfectly even, that they seem less like the work of human hands than something woven by patient spiders or industrious fairies. The candlelight catches the silver thread she occasionally uses to highlight certain motifs, sending tiny sparkles across the fabric like captured starlight. Each stitch is a meditation, each completed flower or vine a small prayer offered up to the quiet night. Margaret's breathing is as steady as her needlework, and occasionally she hums softly under her breath. Old melodies her own mother taught her, songs that have been passed down through generations of women who sat just so in chambers just like this one, creating beauty with nothing more than needle and thread and infinite patience. Beside her, young Eleanor tends to a basket of mending that never seems to empty. Tonight she works on a torn sleeve of one of the Lord's hunting tunics, her younger eyes able to work by the dimmer light at the edge of the candle's glow. Her needle moves more quickly than Margaret's, less concerned with perfection than with practical repair, but there is still grace in her movements, still a meditative quality to the rhythm of her work. Eleanor is perhaps 16, with the fresh complexion and bright eyes of youth, but already she shows the steady competence that marks a well-trained gentlewoman. She has been in the lady's service for 3 years now, sent from her father's smaller castle to learn the refined skills that will make her a valuable wife when the time comes for marriage negotiations. But for now, she is content to learn the quiet arts of household management, to absorb the gentle wisdom that passes between women in these peaceful night hours. The third woman, Alice, works at a small table near the window, copying recipes into a leather-bound book by the light of two tall candles. Her quill moves carefully across the parchment, forming the elegant letters that will preserve the household's culinary secrets for future generations. Tonight she transcribes the recipe for a special cordial made from honey and herbs, a remedy for sleeplessness that the castle's women have been perfecting for years. The scratch of her quill against the parchment provides a gentle counterpoint to the soft whisper of needles through fabric, creating a quiet symphony of feminine industry. Occasionally she pauses to dip her quill in the small pot of ink at her elbow, or to consult the original recipe written in a cramped hand on a piece of much-handled parchment. Her lips move silently as she reads, ensuring that every ingredient, every instruction, is copied with perfect accuracy. The solar itself reflects the refined tastes and practical needs of its occupants. Cushions covered in soft wool and silk are scattered about, providing comfortable seating for the day's activities. A small loom stands in one corner, its half-finished weaving showing the beginnings of what will become a fine coverlet for one of the guest chambers. Baskets hold balls of wool in various stages of preparation, some still rough from the sheep, others carded smooth and ready for spinning, still others already spun into fine thread awaiting the weaver's shuttle. The walls are hung with completed examples of the women's work. Tapestries that tell stories both sacred and secular, their colors still rich despite years of patient labor. One shows the Virgin Mary surrounded by lilies and roses, her face serene and gentle in the candlelight. Another depicts a hunt scene, with ladies and gentlemen pursuing a white hart through a stylized forest. These hangings serve both decorative and practical purposes, adding beauty to the chamber while helping to keep out the winter cold that tries to seep through the stone walls. A small altar occupies one corner of the room, its surface covered with a cloth of snowy linen embroidered with gold thread. Upon it sit a carved wooden crucifix, a small silver reliquary, and a breviary bound in tooled leather. This is where the women say their private prayers, where they keep their own vigil with the divine during the quiet hours when the rest of the castle sleeps. The conversation between the three women flows like a gentle stream, touching on matters both practical and personal. Margaret speaks softly of the lady's youngest child, who has been fretful with his teeth, and shares a remedy her own grandmother used for such ailments. Eleanor mentions that the steward's wife is expecting another child come spring, and the women begin planning the gifts of clothing and household items that will welcome the new arrival. Alice looks up from her copying to tell them of a letter that arrived with the last merchant, bringing news from her sister who married into a household 2 days' ride to the south. The sister writes of a harsh early winter, but also of a successful harvest festival and the betrothal of their youngest brother to a merchant's daughter from the nearest town. These connections between households, these threads of kinship and friendship that stretch across the countryside, are as important to the castle's welfare as any political alliance. The night deepens around them, but the women feel no urgency to sleep. This is their time, these quiet hours when they can work and talk without the constant interruptions that daylight brings. In a world where privacy is rare and personal time even rarer, these midnight vigils in the solar represent a precious freedom, a space carved out of the demands of medieval life where they can simply be themselves. The candles burn lower, their flames steady and bright in the still air. The brazier glows warmly, its carefully banked coals providing gentle heat without smoke or sparks that might endanger the precious textiles stored throughout the chamber. Outside, the wind moves through the castle's towers and battlements, but here in this protected space, all is calm and peaceful. Margaret finishes a section of her embroidery and holds it up to catch the light, examining her work with the critical eye of a master craftswoman. Satisfied, she folds the linen carefully and places it in a basket lined with lavender-scented cloth. Tomorrow she will begin a new section, continuing the patient work that will eventually create something beautiful enough to grace the altar on feast days. Eleanor completes her mending and reaches for another garment from the seemingly endless pile. Her hands are sure and quick, guided by training that began in childhood and has been refined through constant practice. She thinks of her own future, of the household she will someday manage, of the daughters she will teach these same skills in solar chambers yet to be built. Alice finishes copying the cordial recipe and carefully sands the wet ink to prevent smudging. She closes the recipe book and places it safely in a wooden chest, where it will join the other volumes that preserve the household's accumulated wisdom. These books represent generations of feminine knowledge, carefully recorded and preserved for those who will come after. As the night moves toward its deepest hour, the women begin to prepare for sleep. They bank the brazier carefully, arrange the candles safely, and put away their work until tomorrow's vigil. The solar settles into peaceful quiet, its occupants finally ready to join the great community of sleepers that fills the castle from tower to dungeon. In this gentle feminine space, surrounded by the fruits of patient labor and careful tending, sleep comes easily and dreams are soft. The women of the castle have created their own sanctuary within the larger fortress, a place where beauty and practicality, tradition and innovation, wisdom and wonder blend together in perfect harmony. And in that harmony, they find the deepest rest of all. After long hours of darkness, a change begins to whisper through the castle. It is not yet light, but the deepest black of the night has begun to soften at the edges, giving way to the deep blue-gray that speaks of dawn's distant approach. The castle still sleeps, still holds its peaceful vigil with the darkness. But somewhere in the very air itself, there is a subtle shift, a gentle awakening that starts in the soul before it touches the eyes. In the eastern tower, where the lady's solar catches the first hint of morning, the shuttered windows begin to show the faintest outline of gray around their edges. The change is so gradual, so subtle, that it might be imagination rather than reality, but it is there nonetheless. The first whisper of the turning world, the slow wheel of time carrying the castle from night toward day. The castle's rooster, perched in his place of honor in the courtyard, lifts his head and feels the ancient stirring in his breast. Something older than thought, older than memory, tells him that his moment approaches. His dark eyes scan the courtyard, seeing nothing yet but feeling everything. The imperceptible lightening of the air, the subtle shift in the quality of darkness that speaks to his deepest instincts. Soon, very soon, his voice will split the silence and call the castle back to the waking world. In the kitchens, where the great hearths have slumbered under their blankets of ash and banked coals, a faint warmth still radiates from the stone ovens. The air here holds the lingering fragrance of yesterday's bread, the ghost of roasted meat, the sweet memory of honey cakes that grace the Lord's table. But even here, in this realm of fire and sustenance, there is a sense of waiting, of preparation for the coming day's labors. The kitchen cat, a battle-scarred veteran of countless midnight hunts, sits perfectly still in the doorway, her ears pricked forward as she listens to sounds too subtle for human perception. Her whiskers twitch slightly as she tests the air, reading messages written in scents and currents invisible to human senses. She knows, with the certainty that comes from living close to the rhythms of the natural world, that the night is beginning its slow retreat. In the stables, the horses shift restlessly in their stalls, their breathing changing from the deep rhythms of sleep to something lighter, more alert. The Lord's great destrier lifts his magnificent head and whickers softly, a sound barely louder than a sigh, but carrying within it the first note of the day's awakening song. The stable cats stretch and begin their morning patrol, padding silently through the straw-scented darkness with renewed purpose. Up on the battlements, the night watch continues his patient patrol, but his steps seem somehow different now. Less the endless marking of time that characterizes the deep night hours, and more the purposeful movement of someone aware that his vigil is slowly drawing toward its close. He pauses at the eastern wall and scans the horizon, seeing nothing yet but darkness, but feeling in his bones the approach of the moment when darkness will begin its retreat. The wind that moves through the castle's towers and courtyards carries a different quality now. Still cold, still bearing the sense of winter and sleeping earth, but touched with something else, something that speaks of change and renewal. It whispers through the arrow slits and around the stone corners, bringing with it the first faint promise of the day to come. In the chapel, Brother Francis maintains his vigil before the altar, his lips moving silently in the prayers that have filled the night hours. His candles have burned lower, their flames steady and bright in the sacred darkness, casting gentle shadows on the carved saints that watch over his devotions. But even he, lost in contemplation and prayer, feels the subtle shift in the world around him, the gradual turning from night's contemplative darkness toward day's active light. The sleeping chambers throughout the castle hold their peaceful silence, but even here there are signs of change. A child stirs in her sleep and sighs softly before settling deeper into her dreams. A servant shifts on his straw pallet, his body responding to signals older than consciousness. The lady in her fine chamber breathes more lightly now, her sleep moving toward the surface like a swimmer rising slowly toward the light. In the Lord's chamber, the master of the castle sleeps more peacefully now than he did during his earlier hours of restless thought. His breathing is deep and regular, his face relaxed in the candlelight that still flickers beside his bed. But his dreams, which earlier in the night were touched with worry and responsibility, now carry hints of hope and possibility, as if the approaching dawn brings with it the promise of solutions to the challenges that kept him wakeful. The scullery maids who sleep in the kitchen's warm alcoves begin to stir, their bodies responding to the ancient rhythm that has governed human life since the first fires were kindled against the darkness. Their sleep grows lighter, more fragile, preparing them for the moment when they will rise and begin the day's work of feeding and sustaining the castle's community. Even the youngest members of the household feel the change. In the nursery, a baby opens her eyes for a moment, looking around with the grave, wondering expression of the very young. She sees nothing but shadows and gentle candlelight, but she feels the shift in the air, the subtle alteration in the quality of darkness that speaks to instincts older than language. After a moment, she closes her eyes again and returns to sleep, but her breathing has changed, become lighter and more ready for waking. The castle's wells and cisterns, those deep pools of water that sustain life within the walls, seem to reflect some new quality in the darkness above them. The water moves almost imperceptibly, stirred by currents too subtle to see, but somehow responding to the great turning of the world from night toward day. Even the stone itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the moment of transformation. In the guardroom, the soldiers who sleep between their watches begin to stir, their hands moving unconsciously toward their weapons in the instinctive gesture of men who live always ready for danger. But tonight there is no threat, only the peaceful passage of time and the slow, gentle awakening of the world. Their movements settle back into stillness, but the quality of their sleep has changed, grown lighter and more alert. The air in the great hall, still fragrant with the memory of evening's feast, seems to shimmer with expectation. The long tables stand empty and clean, ready to welcome the day's first meal. The hearth holds only glowing embers now, but they pulse with the promise of renewed flame, of warmth and light to greet the coming day. And still the rooster waits, feeling in his breast the growing certainty that his moment approaches. His call, when it comes, will be the key that unlocks the castle from night's gentle embrace, the the signal that turns the great wheel of daily life once more toward activity and purpose. But for now, he waits in the gray darkness, a patient herald of the dawn. The castle balanced on the edge between night and day, between rest and activity, between dreams and waking thought. It is a moment of perfect suspension, when all the deep peace of the night hours still holds sway, but the promise of renewal and new beginning whispers through every stone and timber. In this moment of transition, the castle exists in a state of pure potential, ready to wake, ready to resume the busy patterns of daily life, but still cradled in the profound stillness that has blessed the night hours. It is a moment of perfect balance, when the peace of sleep and the energy of waking stand poised in beautiful equilibrium. The first stirrings of dawn have begun, gentle as a sigh, subtle as the whisper of silk against stone. The castle sleeps still, but it sleeps now with one ear tuned to the approaching day, ready to answer when the morning calls. With the sun now a pale glow on the horizon, the ritual of the morning begins. It is the reverse of the night before. The sound of iron scraping stone, of heavy wooden bars being lifted, of the great gates that sealed the castle from the world slowly opening to welcome the new day. The cycle that began in darkness completes itself in light, and the fortress that withdrew into itself for the night hours begins to reach outward once more. The rooster's call finally splits the gray silence, his voice rising clear and proud in the still air. It is a sound older than the castle itself, older than the stones that form its walls, a voice that has announced the dawn since the first cockerel drew breath. His cry echoes off the courtyard walls, bounces from tower to tower, and seems to awaken something fundamental in the very air itself. The night's gentle spell is not broken but transformed, the peace of darkness giving way to the quiet energy of morning. In the gatehouse, the captain of the guard stirs from his brief rest and moves with practiced efficiency to begin the day's first ceremony. His hands, roughened by years of handling iron and stone, grasp the great wooden bar that has held the gates secure through the dark hours. The bar is massive, hewn from a single oak that grew for centuries before giving its strength to the castle's defense. It takes 3 men to lift it properly, their movements coordinated by long practice and mutual trust. The sound of the bar being lifted is deep and resonant, a groaning of wood and iron that seems to echo from the stones themselves. It is followed by the scrape of metal against metal as the great iron brackets that hold the bar swing slowly aside, their movement deliberate and measured. Each sound in this ancient sequence carries weight and meaning, part of a ritual that connects this morning to every morning since the castle first stood guard over its domain. The portcullis, that great iron grating that dropped like a heavy curtain across the gateway, begins its slow ascent. The chains that lift it creak and groan with the effort, each link singing its own small note in the symphony of awakening. The iron teeth that pointed downward like fangs throughout the night now rise toward the stone arch above, clearing the way for the day's first passage between the inner and outer worlds. As the portcullis rises, it reveals the drawbridge beyond, still raised like a wooden wall against the morning sky. The mechanism that controls it is a marvel of medieval engineering, a complex arrangement of chains and counterweights, pulleys and gears that can lower the massive wooden structure with surprising grace. The bridge itself is built from timber that could have framed a dozen houses, its surface scarred by the passage of countless hooves and wagon wheels, its strength proven by years of faithful service. The chain that holds the drawbridge begins to unwind, each link passing over the great wooden windlass with a rhythmic clinking that marks the bridge's descent. Slowly, majestically, the bridge lowers toward the outer bank, crossing the dark water of the moat like a wooden rainbow bridging 2 worlds. When it finally settles into place with a solid thump that echoes across the water, the castle's connection to the outside world is complete once more. But even as the physical barriers come down, the castle maintains its vigilant watch. Guards take their positions at the gate towers, their eyes scanning the road that leads through the village and away into the wider world. They look for the expected and watch for the unexpected, their presence a reminder that even in daylight, even with gates open and bridges lowered, the castle remains ready to defend itself and those it shelters. The first traveler of the day appears while the morning mist still clings to the fields. It is a lone merchant, his pack mule loaded with goods from the town 15 miles to the south. He approaches the gate slowly, respectfully, understanding that even open gates are crossed only with permission. The guards recognize him. He has made this journey monthly for years, bringing news and trade goods to the castle's community. His greeting to the guards is warm but brief, a mixture of familiarity and proper deference that speaks to the delicate balance of relationships that govern medieval life. He brings word that the harvest festival in the town was successful, that the roads remain clear of bandits, that a new shipment of salt and spices arrived from the coast. These small pieces of information are as valuable as the goods in his pack, connecting the castle to the wider network of commerce and communication that sustains medieval society. As the merchant passes through the gates and into the courtyard, the castle's own people begin to emerge for the day's work. Servants appear from doorways, their movements purposeful but unhurried, following routines established by generations of practice. The stable boys emerge to tend their charges. The kitchen maids begin their preparations for the day's first meal. The guards change shifts with the quiet efficiency of men who trust each other completely. The lady of the castle appears at her solar window, looking down into the courtyard with the satisfied expression of someone who sees her domain awakening according to proper order. She has slept well, her rest undisturbed by the worries that sometimes trouble her lord's sleep. From her vantage point, she can see the entire pattern of morning activity unfolding below, each person taking their place in the great dance of daily life. The chapel bell begins to ring, calling the faithful to the day's first prayers. Its bronze voice carries across the courtyard and beyond the walls, reaching the ears of peasants in the fields and travelers on the road. The sound speaks of continuity and tradition, of a rhythm of worship that has marked the passage of days for centuries. Those who can will gather in the chapel, but even those whose work keeps them elsewhere will pause for a moment of private prayer as the bell calls them to remembrance. In the kitchens, the great hearths roar back to life as the cooks begin their preparations for the morning meal. The fires that slumbered under ash and ember through the night hours now blaze bright and hot, ready to transform raw ingredients into the sustenance that will fuel the day's activities. The scent of wood smoke and baking bread begins to fill the air, a fragrant promise of the feast to come. The castle's children emerge into the courtyard, their sleep-tousled hair and bright eyes speaking of the complete rest that comes only to the young. They move with the quick energy of morning, ready to resume the games and lessons that fill their days. Their laughter begins to add a new note to the castle's morning symphony, a sound that speaks of hope and continuity, of the future taking shape in the present moment. The Lord himself appears on the steps of the great hall, his bearing erect and confident despite the brief hours of sleep. His eyes scan the courtyard, taking in the orderly bustle of morning activity, noting the smooth functioning of the complex organism that is his domain. He exchanges nods with the captain of the guard, brief words with the steward, a warm smile for his lady watching from her window above. The morning sun climbs higher, burning away the last wisps of mist and flooding the courtyard with golden light. The stones that held the chill of night now begin to warm under the sun's touch, and the castle seems to stretch and settle like a great cat waking from peaceful sleep. The night's protective shell falls away naturally, replaced by the open readiness of day. More travelers begin to appear on the road, farmers bringing produce to market, pilgrims continuing their journey to distant shrines, messengers carrying news between great houses. Each is evaluated by the guards, welcomed or questioned according to the circumstances, but all are treated with the courtesy due to honest folk going about their lawful business. The drawbridge that spent the night raised against the world now serves its other purpose, providing safe passage for those who have legitimate business with the castle. The moat that formed a barrier in darkness now reflects the morning sky like a mirror, its waters calm and welcoming rather than forbidding. As the morning advances and the castle fully awakens to the new day, the memory of night's quiet peace remains like a blessing on all who shared in its rest. The gates are open, the world is welcomed back, but the deep contentment of the night hours lingers in every stone, every timber, every heart that found solace in the darkness. The castle has completed its nightly transformation from fortress to sanctuary and back to fortress again, ready to face whatever the day may bring while carrying within itself the profound peace of the hours when it stood closed against the world, a place where rest was absolute and safety was assured. Tonight, we have wandered together through passages carved from centuries of silence, our footsteps echoing softly against stones that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless moons. We have walked the ancient battlements where sentries once stood vigilant, their torches long since extinguished, their duties passed to the eternal guardians of shadow and starlight. We have lingered in the great hall, where embers still whisper their glowing secrets to the darkness, painting the massive walls in shades of amber and gold that dance like memories of forgotten feasts. The castle has revealed its deepest secrets to us tonight, not the treasures hidden in its vaults or the stories carved into its stones, but something far more precious, the profound, unshakable peace that lives within these walls. This is a peace that has been distilled over centuries, settling into every corner like morning mist, becoming as much a part of the castle as its foundation stones. It is the peace of absolute security, of being completely enclosed and protected from the uncertainties that roam the world beyond. As we explored these sacred halls, you felt it too, that deep, bone-deep sense of safety that comes from being sealed away from everything that might disturb or threaten. The massive oak doors, bound with iron and sealed with the weight of ages, stand as sentinels between you and any trouble that might exist in the waking world. The thick stone walls, built to withstand the mightiest storms and the passage of countless years, wrap around you like the embrace of eternity itself. Here, within these ancient chambers, time moves differently. The frantic pace of the outside world cannot penetrate these sacred spaces. The worries that chase through daylight hours cannot scale these walls or breach these gates. Instead, there is only the gentle rhythm of the castle's own breathing, the soft sigh of wind through arrow slits, the distant settling of ancient timbers, the whispered conversations between stones that have kept each other company for centuries. You have become part of this timeless sanctuary now. The castle has accepted you into its protection, wrapping you in the same security it has offered to countless souls who have sought refuge within its embrace. Feel how completely you belong here, how perfectly you fit into this space between the world of action and the realm of dreams. The drawbridge has been raised behind you, and there is no way back. Only the gentle descent into deeper peace, deeper rest, deeper trust in the safety that surrounds you. The night watch has been set, invisible guardians taking their posts along every wall and in every tower. They ask nothing of you but rest. Your vigil is over. Your duties are complete. Others will hold the darkness at bay while you surrender to the profound comfort of being utterly, completely protected. The gates are barred with iron and sealed with starlight. The moat reflects the moon like a mirror of liquid silver, an additional barrier between you and any disturbance. Listen now to the castle's lullaby, the gentle creaking of ancient wood, the soft whisper of banners stirring in the night breeze, the distant echo of your own heartbeat joining the rhythm of this sacred place. These sounds are not disturbances but invitations, calling you deeper into the castle's embrace, deeper into the peace that has been waiting here for you all along. As your mind continues to float through the corridors of memory and dream, Let yourself become one with these walls of protection. Let the deep, reassuring silence of stone and shadow become your own inner quiet. Feel how the castle's strength becomes your strength, its peace your peace, its timeless security your perfect rest. The story of our journey together begins to fade now, like candlelight growing dim in the great hall. But the peace we have discovered here does not fade. It deepens, settling into your bones like the very foundations of the castle itself. You are safe. You are protected. You are exactly where you belong. The gates are barred, the watch is kept, and all is profoundly, eternally well. There is nothing left to guard, nothing left to fear, nothing left to do but let yourself sink into the deep, comfortable darkness that waits to receive you. Rest now, traveler. Let the castle hold you. Let its ancient walls be your shelter, its silence your song, its peace your perfect, unending sleep. Good night.